Well, there was a previous video about Jim Carrey and his cult background. So how Mr. Carrey was flirting with ideas such as chaos magic because it became popular in the 1970s when he was a young man, and how because he became good at it, something tried to recruit him sometime in the 1990s into a particular cult, and he got harangued about it, and um, eventually he joined, but he's potentially regretted it. Um, so let's have a little bit of a yarn up about what that cult might or might not be by doing a brief history of Western esoteric cults and how that seems to correspond to Mr. Carey's behaviour. So, three major cults that are of note in the 20th century are Thelema, Chaos Magic, and Wicca. So, Thelema was founded by Aleister Crowley, and Wicca was founded by a man named Gardner, who was an associate of Aleister Crowley, and was partially based on some of Crowley's ideas, but not all of them. Chaos Magic was something completely different. Okay, that was by a guy named Peter Carroll and a guy named Osmond Spear. Um, so none of those cults promote racism. So just put it this way: there's nothing in Thelema that says that you have to be hyper racist or racist at all. There's nothing in Wicca that says that, and there's nothing in Chaos Magic that says that. In Chaos Magic, there is a phrase called "nothing is true and everything is permitted." So, Chaos Magic is for the lawless. Um, um, they try and they're very much into getting away from having any beliefs whatsoever, and that includes moral compass. That's distinct from it doesn't necessarily follow that they want to do bad things. It's more the point that um, everything is permitted, including bad things. Um, Thelema never said to let go of your moral compass. It just said your moral compass was an impediment, or something very similar. Um, Thelema, which is again Aleister Crowley's crap, was quite sexist. So that's where the idea of the Whore of Babylon comes from. So anyone who's experienced a Whore of Babylon curse is probably experiencing the seer or the Thelemites. Wicca is more strongly associated with Star Lodge. It's not the origin of the idea of Star Lodge. The origin of the idea of Star Lodge is associated with um, these days with late 20th century Blue Lodge masonry. However, the actual idea of Star Lodge in that particular patterning comes from Wicca, and that was founded in the 1950s. Tries to lay claims to being proto-European paganism, but it's not. It's actually 1950s mathematics. Well, not mathematics, but the idea of the 12 signs, having a representative of the 12 signs of the zodiac in your coven, plus a representative of the sun and the moon type of thing. So these are adaptations of some of Crowley's ideas. It's not necessarily masonry proper, and it also isn't necessarily, you wouldn't describe it as ancient European paganism proper either. So those are the three main ones. As you can see, those three main ones don't have any bearing resemblance to the Order of the Nine Angles, for example, which is a bit like the esoteric equivalent of the Dark Enlightenment and predates it. So you might want to wonder what that's about. No, really, there's similarities between the Order of the Nine Angles and the Dark Enlightenment or Dark Matter, which is very, very concerning. Please look it up. So at this point, we're not saying which one seeing which one Mr. Carey was part of. In previous Wikipedia articles in years gone by, before he tried to brand himself as some kind of, pseudo-Indian guru, William Des type character, it used to say that he was into chaos magic. Okay, so we're going with that. Um, 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 that's someone who probably doesn't like being told what to do. Suggests that Mr. Carey grew up in a very strict environment, and he was trying to get away from that strictness. He probably didn't take it too well, the idea of having to join a cult at all. Again, that was referred to earlier. And chances are the cult that came for him was probably the late 20th century version of Blue Lodge Masonry, which is Wiccan inspired. So the kind that has the 12 signs of the zodiac as part of its lodge. However, that form of Blue Lodge Masonry is not actually the same thing as Blue Lodge Masonry proper. So this is what they call in Blue Lodge Masonry. Okay, and what is Blue Lodge Masonry is not the same. Okay, but there has been an infiltration. And the infiltration came from the ideas in the 1970s from a completely different group that was independent of the Masons, independent of the Chaotes, independent of the Wiccans, and independent of the Thelemites as well. And that's called Joy of Satan Ministries. Okay, or a similar group. Okay, so if that group didn't come up with this idea, sorry. Okay, don't want to make false attributions at all. But it was one of those groups that have come up with the idea of the alien hierarchy. Okay, that idea was invented in the 1970s. The idea of the alien hierarchy. So the aliens are are the bosses of reality, and they're at the top of the hierarchy. That idea is not part of it's not part of Masonry. It wasn't part of the original Theosophy. It wasn't part of Thelema. It wasn't part of Wicca. And it wasn't part of Chaos Magic. It's an idea that got invented in the 1970s. That idea ran parallel to the silly crap about Chariot of the Gods, where allegedly the Ezekiel wheel was a device made by aliens from outer space. Or more specifically, the world religions were invented by aliens from outer space, and the Ezekiel wheel was a way to figure that out, which or something very similar, which isn't true. Okay, it's probably more likely the case that since the 1970s, the Ezekiel wheel devices have been recoded in some, but not in all cases, to include an alien hierarchy as a consequence of those groups operating in the 1970s, and as well as the imagery and the collective mind spaces, including television shows like Star Trek and a wide variety of science fiction genres. So some of those aliens are quote unquote artificial intelligence egregores, but not necessarily generated by computers. It really depends on which one you're dealing with. And this is all while aliens exist and so on and so forth. So the sort of not marriage, but more like intersection of these different groups in the late 90s and early 2000s represents very, very drastically different ideas coming together to create a sort of completely different worldview that is really not representative of any of the groups that they came from at all, and is quite different. And so Mr. Carey, by saying things like the world doesn't belong to us, in other words, it belongs to the aliens, was referring to ideas like that. You look like a swarm of tetrahedrons with a nice perfume. Refers to some of the ideas you'll find, and that's so a swarm of tetrahedrons would refer to some of their shapes of perhaps Merkabahs or whatever they call them, right? So basically, if he was a subscriber to alien hierarchy, then he would be someone who'd be opposed to someone who would want to close the Crowley portals that were opened during the Crowley Gardner joint venture era. So sort of 1930s, around about then. There were these portals that were opened by Crowley and Gardner to let more aliens through. And if someone found a way to close those portals, then members of those groups would be most upset. So in this case, that would make Jim Carrey my enemy, not my friend. Um, so, yeah, have a nice day.